Dogville is the first film in Lars von Trier's United States trilogy. As such, it's come under a lot of criticism for being anti-American. Although that's certainly not untrue based on interviews and such, I believe it's much more rewarding to view the film simply as anti-society. So I'm going to take a bit of a different approach and analyze Dogville as a parable for the individual's integration into the collective. The story involves a wanted young woman, Grace, who is pursued by violent gangsters. She seeks refuge in a small town. The unassuming inhabitants of this town hesitantly accept her at first, but very gradually they begin to show their true face by asking more and more out of her, demanding that she work for longer hours, for less pay, and so on. This goes on until she eventually is straight up raped and abused. I think the lack of full physical sets and the use of chalk drawings on the floor instead is a hint for the audience to view the events unfolding on the screen as not entirely literal. It's possible to view Grace's entrance into Dogville as a baby being born into the world. It's worth mentioning that we know nothing about Grace's past.
Your hands are surely the most alabaster hands I've ever seen.
I've never worked a day in my life, so...
A baby has no prior knowledge of how society and interpersonal relationships function and has to be taught in order to survive in society. This is Grace's task. In fact, on her very first night in Dogville, she's immediately taught the etiquette that it is impolite to refuse food when offered.
Well, it may be best for your education. But Grace, in this town, in these times, it's very impolite not to eat what's set before you.
I'm so sorry.
She obeys, and this sets up the pattern that will continue for the greater part of the film.
I mean, I'm willing to learn.
There must be somebody who needs help.
Tom explains to her that she has 2 weeks to get the townspeople to accept her, otherwise she'll be cast out, where she'll be at the mercy of the gangsters.
Surely we can offer 2 weeks. And if after that time so much as one man cries out, "Be gone," I promise, I'll happily send her packing myself.
Basically, it's fit in or die. The thing about society or any group is that you're either an insider or an outsider.
They're keeping an eye on you. And if you love them already, they might need a little dissuading. We got 2 weeks to get them to accept you.
What do you want me to do?
Do you mind physical labor?
No.
Dogville offered you 2 weeks. Now you offer them.
And to be an insider, one must contribute value and learn the language and symbols of the society. Grace learns that she must contribute to society by working for the townspeople, much like how we must work in society to earn money and survive.
Martha rang the hours, conducting her through the day, so she could serve as eyes for McKay, a mother for Ben, friend for Vera, and brains for Bill.
Eventually, she saves up enough money to buy these figurines, even though she didn't even like them in the first place.
Grace was just casting one more look at the figurines she herself would have dismissed as tasteless a few days earlier.
And 7 figurines that are not awful at all.
Ah, the power of marketing. There's a scene later on in the film when the angry Vera destroys these figurines, and Grace is unable to hold back her tears, and the narrator comments,
The figurines were the offspring of the meeting between the township and her. They were the proof that in spite of everything, her suffering had created something of value.
This is the key to the entire film. The figurines are ugly and they have no value. The work she does, her suffering, also has no value since the townspeople don't even need anything done.
His plan to make everybody like me has run into a few problems because nobody wants me to work for them. Awful lot to do here in Dogville, considering nobody needs anything done.
But she is still devastated when she loses these figurines, her possessions, because she had purchased them in exchange for her labor. This is the powerful commentary on the illusion of capitalism and society. Things that have no inherent value become symbolically valuable, and understanding these symbols is a necessity for navigating society. I think this is why, Von Trier decided to forego physical sets and instead have chalk drawings delineate people's houses. It strips bare the illusion of possession and reminds us that, for better or worse, the idea of property is not inherent, but rather an invention of capitalistic society. Indeed, at the end of the film, the lines and words on the ground have all but disappeared, except for the signifier for the dog, which actually transforms into a dog, perhaps reminding us of the difference between the concretely real and the symbolically real. Obviously, adding to the theme of the arbitrariness of value placement and language placement is a visually prominent elm street that has no elm trees.
And while a sentimental soul from the East Coast had once dubbed their main street Elm Street, though no elm had ever cast its shadow in Dogville, they saw no reason to change anything.
Okay, so Grace has acclimated to the town. What's the problem? Well, being an insider, a part of the collective, might not be much safer than being an outsider. Tom convinces Grace that she needs the town, society, to keep her safe from the gangsters, who represent brute forces and instinctual violence. This is reminiscent of the philosopher Thomas Hobbes's Leviathan, which basically states that human beings are inherently evil and it's up to the government to keep people in line for their own protection. And for that, some sacrifice of individual freedom is necessary. By the way, Tom and the town's voting system is a mini model of democracy, where we see the townspeople getting swayed by Tom's words and speeches, creating a tyranny of the majority sort of situation. So Tom can be seen as a representation of the politician, or government in general. He promises to protect Grace, the individual, from harm and exploitation, but that of course does not work. The selfish human instinct society claims to protect individuals from manifest within society and create a sort of systemic exploitation wherein Grace is offered less and less freedom until she is literally in chains.
From a business perspective, your presence in Dogville has become more costly. They wanted you to work longer hours. Martha, she said she'd ring her bell every half hour so you could keep track of your new schedule.
Of course, if we choose to view this through the U.S. trilogy lens, then many aspects also match up to how the U.S. dealt with illegal immigration for some time.
I'm willing to do whatever it takes. If I have to work harder, longer hours for less pay, then I'm willing to do that. Of course I am.
Eventually, we see the most deplorable state of society, where time is commodified, sex is commodified, everything has a price, and worse, there is no escape. The government has arbitrarily decided that you're a threat and basically sentences you to death by calling the gangsters. It's a betrayal aided by the citizens of the town who act as a jury. The scary part is, the same collective that decides whether or not you're accepted also decides whether or not you have the right to live. Okay, so I haven't talked about the ending yet. The head gangster turns out to be Grace's dad, who saves Grace from the town and lets her decide what to do with the town. So after some hesitation, she decides to kill them all and spare the dog. Now, there are so many ways to interpret this. It could symbolize the triumph of force and instinct and the individual over society. The collective is destroyed and the government dismantled. Grace even says,
"Some things you have to do yourself."
But for all I know, Lars could be saying that people suck and we're all doomed. The ending has so many religious and political implications about war, judgment, forgiveness, grace as Christ, etc. that can be interpreted any way you like. And perhaps the way you choose to see the ending is simply Dogville holding up a mirror.